Hey everyone, Newman here with 910 ACP and Cape Fear Airguns. Today we are going over the original FX Regulator. This is part number 19043 is what they called it, but it was the Royale, Bobcat, Wildcat Mk1, Mk2, Verminator, Gladiator, Monsoon, FX Boss, FX Streamline. This is the regulator for them all. We're going to be going through how to reseal it. As you can see here, this was a FX Wildcat or Streamline model since it has the outer tube. But I'll be showing you in the video how to take this apart, take the whole regulator apart, how to reseal it, and how to put it all back together, and the measurements you need to take along the way to try to get back to the same pressure you were at before without a regulator tester. It's not a 100% method, but it's at least better than nothing. So we'll go over the O-rings first. So the first O-rings are going to be the big ones for the sleeve. They're 23 by 2.5 MBR 70. These are the ones right here, 1 and 2. This will be in the Streamline and Wildcat Mk1 Mk2 models. The next two O-rings are the second largest ones. Those are these two on the outside of the actual body itself. They are 11.91 by 2.62 MBR 70. This style of the regulator will be available in all the models listed. So Wildcat Mk1, Mk2, Streamline, Royale, Boss, Verminator, Gladiator. The next size is this one. It's going to be located underneath this brass. So once we take this brass piece off, it is underneath there. It is 7.5 by 2.0 MBR 70. Here's the final two O-rings. They'll be going on the inside of the body. So once we open up the regulator, I'll be able to show you those. This first one is a 6.07 by 1.78 MBR 70. And the smaller one is a 2.9 by 1.78 MBR 70. The regulator uses all NBR 70 O-rings. There's no NBR 90s. There is one more seal in here. It's a Delrin puck. You shouldn't have to replace that. If it is damaged, you can typically just flip it over. You can pull it out and flip it over and have a brand new sealing surface. So to get into actually resealing it, the outer O-rings are as simple as just popping them off. So if you have any type of fingernails, you can kind of squeeze it and then just roll them off. These old rings. See here, like you can see this one will start to deform and delaminate or unravel, I guess. Take those, set them to the side, and the new O-rings, you just stretch it on. There you go. That's how simple the sleeve is. It's just take off and put it right back on, no problem. For the next ones, these two big guys, they're pretty difficult to take off. I would recommend either a pair of pinchers or maybe an O-ring pick. The problem with the O-ring pick is you can cause damage, just like you see some damage there. Luckily, that's not a sealing surface. But yeah, you can cause some damage to the aluminum, since this is aluminum right here, if you use an O-ring pick, so it's best to use some pinchers. I typically use some small hemostats such as this. Come up here and grab it. Twist, and that puts the hemostat underneath the O-ring when you twist like that, and they can just pull it off the backside like that. So again, you can pinch, comes up into a loop, twist as you're pinching still, and you'll end up underneath it, and just pull off. They're pretty tough O-rings, so might take a little bit. But there you go. Once we got those O-rings off, we can go ahead and start with our measurements to make sure that we get as close back to the original pressure as possible. So as you see here, I have my trusty calipers, I have a notepad, a pen, and I've got my piece here. So the first measurement we're going to take is from the bottom of the aluminum housing to the top of the colored nut here. Sometimes it's going to be different colors for different presets. Or else if it's old enough, it won't have a color. It will just be silver, which then is just based off whatever the measurement is. Based off this blue, this was a 125 bar regulator, is what that blue meant. So I'm going to go ahead and measure this, and I have a regulator tester, so afterwards I'll be able to test it, but if not, at least you'll be kind of close to where you were before. With the new seals, you're not going to be exactly at the same pressure you were at these settings, but at least you'll be close. So, that being said, first measurement is from the bottom of the housing to the top of the nut, not the top of the brass piece, the nut. So make sure you're on the nut and not the brass piece. And you're down to the housing. So 42.55 millimeter. I bumped it when I was coming off. It was 42.55. So what I like to do is sit here and I'll trace the basic outline of the regulator. As you see here, that's the basic outline here. I'm just going to draw that through. So then we've got our bottom. This is the other side of the regulator housing. That's the gap for the nut there. And then we've got this, the washer stack. And then this is your nut right here. So this is your colored nut. That's your brass piece right here, the brass knurling. This is your housing, and this is the stem. So from here to here, was 42.55 millimeter. Then the next one we'll measure is from the tip of your brass here to the nut, because that'll tell you the depth that this needs to go in. Since we already have the baseline of the nut to the housing here, then the nut to the brass shouldn't change as long as that's inserted all the way in. So, and yes, it will be a little bit off center, as obviously you cannot align that properly, but with the best measurement possible, getting about 47.15. So what I do, I'm going to just draw another line like that. I'm going to put 47.15 millimeter there. So that way I know that from here to there is 47.15, but from here to there, 42.55. After that, we're going to measure the brass knurl to the bottom of the housing. And make sure that you're on the brass knurling and not a washer. So I'm at 30.81. So I'm going to go down here. That way I can see that. And the last one will be overall. On mine I've got 47.66. Oh, well, let me measure that again. So there we go, 47.75. So now we have our measurements so that whenever we're done resealing, we can try to put it all back to roughly the same place it was, and hopefully we'll get back to the same pressure. So in order to begin disassembly, typically this brass knurl piece is Loctited into your aluminum housing here. So with that, you'll need to get some soft jaw vise or vice grips and grip it back here at the back side in order to apply some heat, like a heat torch or a heat gun or a torch to the aluminum housing here to heat it up in order to melt the Loctite. Then you'll be able to use a pair of vice grips or pliers or like soft jaw pliers, something like that, to grab onto this brass knurling and turn it off. You don't ever want to adjust your colored nut here. You don't want to turn that, and you don't want to turn this middle hex here. That's a 3mm hex. You don't want to turn that because that adjusts your settings. You don't need to disassemble that for any reason when it comes to resealing. There's no seals under there. You don't need to clean it or anything like that. You just want to leave that be. You don't want to touch that. So for this side here, you need either a pin spanner or a pair of jeweler's pliers such as this. It kind of works the same. So essentially you just stick it, either the pin spanner or the jeweler's pliers in there. Grip pretty tight. You should just be able to twist it out just like that. So there's the O-ring I was talking about right there. And there's the Delrin puck I was talking about that you can replace. Either flip it over or you could order a replacement from FX. We'll get back to this Delrin puck when we take out this other side. But this is at least showing you that O-ring right there. Again, that is the 7.5 by 2 MBR70. So since we have the bottom side removed now, we're going to go ahead and remove this top side. I'm going to go do that off camera because, again, like I said, you have to clamp this in a vise, heat it up, and then use a pair of vice grips or something on the knurling to twist it off. But I won't go too far. I'll just break it free and then I'll show you the rest on camera. So I'll be right back. So went off camera, heated it up, and loosened it up. Go ahead and unthread it a little bit. I've got the vice grips very loosely on the brass. And once you get it started, it just comes right off, and you can see the Loctite residue on there. And there's your two O-rings. This is just your housing. It has no more O-rings. Like I said, that's the one from the bottom. That's that one O-ring already. But we've already taken care of that. So we can set that to the side. And then we open up our vice grips here. Set those to the side. And it might cause a little bit of damage to the knurling, holding them in the vice grips, but that's about the only way to really grab it. And there you go. The puck just literally fell out there. It's not really much holding it in except for friction. So sometimes they'll be stuck in and you have to drill them out. Sometimes they literally just fall out like that. Another trick that you can do is take high pressure air and blow it through the top here, or else blow it in through the side, through that little port right there. Either that, both those ways can help blow this little puck out rather than having to drill it out. Sometimes they're just so smashed in there you have to drill it though. Well, besides that little puck, we've got two O-rings to replace here. This is your 6.07 by 1.78. And this is your 2.9 by 1.78. You can get these off like any other O-ring. Either you can pinch them off with some hemostats, like such. Like that, so that way you're never touching a metal surface. Like that. If they're hardened or solidified, you may have to a pair of little hemostats like this work as well, because you can pinch it and it'll crack it and break it, and over time they'll just start falling off. If you have to use a pick, use a brass pick, because a stainless steel pick will just destroy the brass innards here. It can severely scar it up, and then it will possibly leak, and you won't be able to fix the leak because the scratch. So at that point, you will have to you're gonna have to replace the regulator, which that's not cheap or fun. So the whole point of this video is so you don't mess up parts, and you can do this yourself just by replacing a couple O-rings, and you're back to good. So now we're going to start the reseal process of replacing everything. I've got a new puck and the two new O-rings. So we're about to install the O-rings. Suggestion is to use some silicone grease on the O-rings before you install them. That way they're nice and lubed all the way around. This is some of the grease I use. It's Super Lube part number 92003. This is just one of the greases they offer that I found that works. They have some grease that's specifically for O-rings as well. That works as well, or whatever your preference is. Another one I've used before is Molly Coat in order to coat the O-rings. As long as it's a high quality silicone grease, it should help the O-rings last longer. I have been told by O-ring manufacturers that modern O-rings don't really need extra grease added to them, but it's always a safe bet. You never know what the O-ring's been through. So we got the O-rings nice and lubed up. See, it's sticking to my finger. Go ahead and put this on. Slide that one on first. It'll make this one go on easier so that you don't catch that groove. And there you go. And then this just pops right in there once you get lined up. Yep, there you go. Slides right in. And now this is resealed. You can put a little bit of extra grease on the outside of the O-rings, the sealing surfaces, just like that, and then spin it around so it gets nice and distributed everywhere. This piece does move up and down. That's how it controls the pressure. That's why the washer is here. It'll compress and decompress. That's what causes the pressure on the washer down here. So now that we have this part done, we can go and replace that seal. This seal is pretty simple. If you can't grab it with hemostats like this, then you can just gently brush it out with a brass pick or a wooden dowel or toothpick or something that's not going to scratch the aluminum. But it comes out pretty easy. And then to put the next O-ring in, this is the 7.5 by 2. Just put a little bit of silicone grease on it and it just goes right in there. Like that. You take your cap, you get it hand started, and then get your pen spanner or, again, your jeweler's pliers. You just set that in there lightly, and then whenever we come back to it, we can adjust the setting as in the depth of it, but for now we're just going to lightly put it on there. After we have that O-ring back in there, we can go ahead and put on our two big seals, the 11.91 by 2.62. So we got a little bit of silicone grease on them, and so we're going to take them and fold them right on. They just pop on just like that. They're nice thick O-rings, so they're not going to get cut easily or anything like that. These are all smooth edges. There's nothing sharp here. They're all smooth. They're all rounded off or chamfered, so you don't have to worry about them being cut. So those are on, good to go. So for the next part, just reassembling the two parts of the regulator. There is Loctite on from the factory, so I recommend a really low strength Loctite, such as a maximum of blue, which is what I'm going to use. I'm going to use the smallest little drop of blue, and then I'll reassemble. So I'll do that on camera. So I have my blue 243 Loctite, which is a medium strength, as you see here, for bolts 1/4 inch to 3/4. This would fall into that range. So we're just going to get it started. And the smallest drop, just one drop. Just right there. Just one drop, spread it out. And it's got a pretty decently long cure time on it. So, and this is only hard for me to twist because the grease keeps slipping in my hands. So, there we go. So now come the measurements. So I'm sure you remember earlier the measurements we took of the different areas of the regulator, the different distances. So we have our calipers back, and we're going to measure everything back just to see how it is right now. So we've got our base to the top of the knurling. That's going to be the first one and easiest one to measure. So we're at 30.81 and 30.81. So we're right back on the money there. 42.55 is from the bottom to the top of the nut. Oh, see, so we accidentally turned the nut a little bit apparently. So we need to hold the brass, turn that nut just a little bit because we're only going about 0.1 millimeter. See, turn it too far. You go back 0.1. So just gonna do a slight turn, a little bit more. So we need to go a little bit more. So it looks like it's kind of depending on where we are on the threads and such, but I was able, it's within the range. Right now I'm exactly at 42.55 and I'm holding it tight, so if I squeeze it really hard it goes to 0.54. This is going to be close enough though. The next measurement we can take is from the nut to the bottom. So make sure not to measure the brass. You're measuring the colored nut itself, not the brass, but the colored nut down to here. That's what, from there to there. And see, now I'm way off. But if you remember, I haven't set this distance yet. So overall, I need to go down about 0.3 or 0.29. And we know this measurement from here to there is correct. And we know from there to there is correct. So it must be this is not turned in enough. So we're going to go down here, lock in our pliers, give it a slight turn and see what we get. So we want to get to an overall 47.75. And then from the nut to the bottom, 47.15. So we're still, yeah, we were a lot more than 0.3 off. Can be a little tricky sometimes, but so that's about as tight as I'm going to be able to get that. Make sure my calipers are still right. Yep, there we go. Also, you have to be consistent on what part of your calipers that you measure with, because you can have slight differences in the thin parts to the thick parts just based off how much surface you're actually grabbing and where on the surface you're grabbing of the part you're measuring. So we're 0.13 millimeter off there. 42.5 is from the bottom. So we're still accurate there. This is reading a little bit off now. Again, that could be all perception. And then 47.15 is from that to there. So about 0.1 off there as well. So again, that could be the location of the nut here. Well, and overall, that's 0.10 off. So I'm going to keep it like it is. And this is going to be part of the tricky part of working on these regulators. It's not going to go, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, it's not going to go back exactly the same as it was before. That's because there's new seals in there. If you remember, that Delrin puck was quite smashed on the old Delrin puck was very smashed, whereas this new one is obviously not smashed. It hasn't been under 125 bar pressure for X many of years. So with that, there's going to be some variation. 0.1 millimeter. It is going to make a difference likely in the regulator pressure, but in the long scheme of things, it's going to be very easy to adjust out. Now, without a regulator tester, that would be hard to determine. You'd have to install it into the gun and see what your velocities were. If you didn't have a chronograph, well, you probably shouldn't be doing this type of repair if you don't have a chronograph or a regulator tester, to be honest. This is a very in-depth repair on this regulator, and there's not a regulator gauge on most of the guns that it goes to, so there's no way to measure. If you are working on a Wildcat Mk1 or Mk2, you do have a regulator gauge that you can work with. So with that, or the Mk1 and Mk2, you can take out a side plug and put in a regulator gauge if you're out of the stock. So at least that way you'd be able to see what your regulator's at, and you can use the rifle as a regulator tester. Other than that, the other models that take this regulator do not have a regulator gauge. So with that being said, you're not supposed to be working on this yourself technically and all that, because it's not an adjustable regulator. With that being said, it's just best to have a chronograph or a regulator tester if you are going to work on this, so you can find out what your velocities or what your regulator pressure is, or what your velocities are supposed to be. That being said, this isn't measuring right now, but this is it's within 0.1, so 0.1 millimeter of the measurements on here, that's going to be pretty much close enough. This measurement is exact right here from the base to the brass, which is the overall just assembly of the regulator. So that means the regulator is assembled correctly. So we're really just messing with the measurements of the new O-rings at this point, new O-rings and the new Delrin seal. So within 0.1 measurement is looking pretty good. So I'm going to pop this into a regulator tester and find out what we have. Just to show, this is my regulator tester. It was given to me by my buddy Ernest a long time ago. I'm not sure where exactly he got it from. As far as I know, it's pretty old and not manufactured anymore. And like there's a piece of the gauge coming off. Nonetheless, I was able to use this. I don't know if there's any on the market, any available or anything like that. I know I don't sell any. But again, like I said, if you have a Wildcat Mk1 or Mk2, you can use the rifle as such, or if you have a different rifle, you can just put over a chronograph to find out where your velocities are. Otherwise, I would recommend sending it to an airgun technician, such as myself or several of the other dealers across the country, or maybe in your local country that have a regulator tester, or someone that just has a Wildcat that they can take their regulator out and put your regulator in to measure the pressure. Alright, so we got the regulator tester pressured with the regulator inside of it. As you can see, I only charged this up to about 140 or so, and it's there. It was matching tank pressure the whole time. It was supposed to be at 125, so this is already telling me that the regulator needs to be adjusted. So we're going to take it out, make some adjustments. I'm going to show you how to make adjustments. We're going to put it back in and test it again. We're going to be needing a 3mm hex and a 10mm wrench. To adjust, you put the 10mm on here and put the 3mm hex in the middle. Whenever you turn it counter or clockwise, it's going to decrease pressure, and counterclockwise is going to increase pressure. So we're going to give it about half turn there. We were pretty far the other way. But you typically want to go in about, if you're already close to the pressure you want, you only would go in about 1/8 inch or 1/8 turn increments. If you're pretty far off, then that's when you can make the big turns. So now we're going to go test it. And as you can see here on the tester, I went a little bit too far. It's only about 80 bar or so. Okay, so it's about 80, 90 bar. So we need to increase it. So we're going to put the 10mm back on the nut. We're trying to go to 125 because the blue color nut. And we're going to tighten it, or counterclockwise, as I mentioned before, tightening it, and go about a 1/4 turn. So there we go. We're going to see what that gets us to. And just for proof, there you go. It's at 125. For a reason, this regulator tester, whenever I take the air pressure off, it drains off about half the pressure out of the little plenum chamber it's got before it seals. So there you go. It's holding right at 125 or 130, with showing on the gauge here about it's about 130 now. So it's somewhere between 125 and 130, which is exactly where it needs to be. So we're going to take it out of the tester, and then the regulator will be all finished. All right, so now we're finished. We got the regulator up to, it's at right at 130, but that's close enough for these regulators. 5 bars isn't going to make that much of a difference. And with that, so and it's such a pain to take the regulator apart or to adjust it and such, put it back in the tester, re-air it, all that. 5 bar really isn't going to make a big difference for this rifle or this regulator. So now we can take the regulator out of the tester, or depressurize, take the regulator out, and then we're going to put it back into the sleeve for the Wildcat Mk2, and then we'll be good to go. So we have the regulator pulled out now, and here's the sleeve. So we're just going to pop this right back into here, just like that. Just pops right in, and it's good to go. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below, or you can always shoot me an email that's going to be in the video description. Feel free to go check out my website as well if you need any tools or tips, or again, if you need any servicing, feel free to reach out as well. In the meantime, happy shooting.